What we're going to attempt to do in this video is talk about a thing that has not been talked about in relation to a game that has been talked about a lot. That's the challenge. That's why for the rest of this video I will only be referring to the game as Fortress 2 Team, and I'll be speaking in haiku. Gun is strong. Hello, it's me, Jay the Vlogman. For the past 10 years, my life has revolved around one thing, and that thing is logistics. The movement of things from point A to point B. That's been my job. It's been my whole life. So every time I go anywhere or look at things, that's the lens that I view it from. When you play the game of Fortress Team 2, you'll notice that in the levels, there are details everywhere. Details that tell you the story. One of those details that was definitely not left out are the logistical details. We can see how everything connects together, how all this stuff is getting moved around, how it's all connected, and I dare say, it's beautiful.
By the sea, by the beautiful sea, you and I, oh how happy we'll be. When each wave comes a-rolling in, we will duck or swim, and we'll float and fool around the water, over and under, and then up for...
Pause. Did you see it? Let's rewind. We're gonna have to go way back. Let's take a minute to talk about bread vans and why they make sense in the Fortress 2 team. As I alluded to earlier, the levels in this game are filled with details. It's neat because just by looking in the background, you can kind of piece together what's going on and what you're actually fighting about. There seemed to have been a concerted effort to have the things that you see in the background and interact with in the actual stage make sense. For example, many of the levels make it look like you're fighting in an area over something a little trivial, like a big gravel company or a big coal mining company, when in reality, it's all just theater. Everything's being set up to hide what's really going on. From death lasers to ballistic missiles to flying saucers, interesting things are happening. But I don't really give a crap about all that stuff. What I care about in this video is what it would take to have all of this stuff staged to begin with. In order to have a giant gravel company or a coal company, even if it's just theater, you're going to need an enormous amount of logistical assets. I don't know what it takes to keep a giant death laser running, or to build and fuel a ballistic missile, but I can tell you, they're probably going to need more than a minivan. Now, considering I just said that we were going to talk about bread vans, you might be wondering, what the fuck does this have to do with bread vans? See, early in my career, when I was but a lowly forklift operator, I had to learn how to drive an additional vehicle, a vehicle called the bread van. A bread van is just a term to describe things that look like this. The term bread van fits nicely for the game of Fortress 2 Team.
Have done nothing but teleport bread for 3 days.
Now the reason why I like the fact that these are used throughout the lore and laden throughout the levels of the game is the fact that bread vans are really handy at getting in places that you might not otherwise be able to get a big truck or a big bus. Having these everywhere would be really handy at moving personnel around with their weapons and ammunition, all while very easily being modified to look like something to keep the charade up. I've got one question for you. Do you like trains? Because this game is full of trains. They're everywhere. Because like we were talking about earlier, There's a lot of cargo that has to get moved from point A to point B to point C back to point A. And in the extremely remote areas that a lot of these battles seem to take place, having a train would be pretty handy. Trains let you move lots and lots of stuff over great distances. But also, if we're talking about a really secretive operation, like the things that take place in Fortress 2, if you were the owner of these railways, it would be a lot easier to control who comes and who goes, which would definitely be something you'd want if you were doing secretive operations like building giant death lasers and ballistic missiles. Somewhere where you can't get a train, well, it's got you covered there too. As you've seen in footage earlier in the video, they have access to huge cargo ships. Once you drive things like forklifts and bread vans for a long enough period of time, eventually you get promoted. You get promoted to operate Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Now, when you have tons of cargo stored everywhere and you have Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, you learn many things, like how easy it is to lose track of your stuff. And in this game, things are kind of chaotically stored everywhere, so I'm assuming they lose a lot of stuff. That's why it's so nice that they have bread vans, okay? Because bread vans can easily drive up to the stuff, pick it up, drive it to where it needs to be. It's not a problem. Problem solved. The way that everything is set up in this game for moving things and getting things where they need to be actually makes a lot of sense, and there's a surprising amount of things put in the game to show that that happens. I'm not going to comb through every single level and tell you all of the ways that it does it, but I think you kind of get the point. One of the points is the fact that just because a game has been talked about a lot doesn't mean there isn't more to say. You can really, there's always more to say. Yeah, maybe next time you play the game, you'll notice things that I haven't noticed. Anyways, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and it takes me a shocking amount of time to get very little done when it comes to video making. Thank you for getting this far, if you made it this far. Hi.